this lecture, we shall discuss the difference between economics, environmental economics, ecological economics, and resource economics. There are a lot of limitations within economics. That's how a new branch emerged, that is environmental economics. But however, the new branch of environmental economics grew so much that actually now we have three disciplines within environmental economics, that has become environmental economics, ecological economics, and resource economics. So we are going to discuss all those issues in this lecture. Now, first we should know the approach of the economics, the core economic subject, that know the methodological approaches of the core economic subject we should know. Then only we can value the merit of the new subject that has emerged as environmental economics or ecological economics. Now, coming to the issues that was covered in environment in the core economics, it is basically if you see the definition of economics, basically it says that if you follow the scarcity definition of economics, we say that there are unlimited desires or choices, and then we have limited resources. So we have to basically optimize this. The consumer optimizes the utility given the budget constraint, and the producer optimizes the profit or the production given the constraint. So there is a cost, there is a budget constraint both for the producer and the consumer, and both have to optimize accordingly. Now, in both cases, they were only dealing with the direct things. For example, when you analyze the producer's behavior, producers analyze only the direct production. Producers try to maximize the production, or maximize the revenue, maximize the profit given the constant, but they only deal with the direct productions. For example, the producers analyze only the direct production of, say, steel, direct production of the biscuits, direct production of the clothes, but they do not look at the indirect productions that they do while producing those commodities. For example, the air pollution, the industrial effluents, and many other waste that is generated while producing the steel. For steel, there is a market, there is a price for it. For biscuits, there is a market, there is a price for it. This can be packaged, this can be sold in the market. But air pollution, industrial effluents, this cannot be sold in the market. There is no price for it. So these were never analyzed in the main production analysis. So we can say that when in the main economics, or in the core economics, we discussed the production of only the direct goods, but we did not consider the indirect productions. Similarly, coming to the consumer, we analyzed only the direct consumptions. For example, a consumer is consuming the biscuit, it is buying from the market. So similarly, it is buying vegetables from the market given the budget constraint, and that's how it is deriving the utility from the direct consumption. But so in this direct consumption, it is paying a price for the product, and it is deriving the utility from it. So this is called basically the direct consumption. But the consumer never in the consumption analysis, we never analyze the indirect consumptions, such as breathing carbon dioxide, or say breathing the dust particles from the atmosphere, or breathing any other hazardous chemicals actually from the atmosphere. That means the producers might have produced certain things that might have gone to the atmosphere, and we are consuming it without paying for it. Similarly, a smoker is smoking cigarette. He or she is directly consuming the cigarette because he or she has paid a price for it. But there is a neighbor actually who is not paying any price, but then he or she is getting the smoke directly. So in this case, we can say that the consumer has been impacted through the indirect consumption. So that has not been analyzed in the economic principles, in the economic analysis. And similarly, we have analyzed the maximization behavior of the individuals individuals maximize the utility, producers maximize the profit or the production, and but nobody talked about the social welfare, say social goods, and so the value of environmental goods and services were ignored in the traditional or conventional economics. So the core economics subject assumed that all inputs are easily available and these are also easily disposable. That means the, the nature was assumed to provide all the resources, very easily, be it mineral sources, be it water, be it forest, be it fishery, anything, any raw material that we assumed that it was easily available without much constraint. And we also assume that once you are consuming these resources, this can also be easily disposable. And nature has unlimited capacity to absorb all the waste that we generate during this production or consumption process. So that was the limitation of economics. And then that's how a new subject develops that recognizes these limitations, and that's how the new subject develops, that is environmental economics. Now, the environmental economics as a subject, basically developed somewhere in 1980s, and then in 1990s it becomes very popular, and then after that, actually, we see it has become a main subject actually in the entire world. Now, economic students are specializing in environmental economic studies. You see a lot of new environmental legislations at international level and national level coming up during 80s and 90s, and that's how overall the discipline actually gets a lot of recognition and highlight. And the environmental economics subject actually studies, basically we can say that economists are trying to understand the impact of economy on the environment, and so also the impact of environment on the economy. Basically, we see how our economic activities are impacting the environment, and that's how indirectly again humans are affected. So we try to assess the impact of environmental pollution on the economy. There is a cost of pollution. So, for example, in Delhi there is a lot of air pollution, and now due to air pollution, now the cost of living in Delhi actually has gone up in the sense that the people living in Delhi will have to spend a lot of money for their health. Similarly, nowadays people will have to buy even oxygen parlor, oxygen cylinders actually to breathe. In Delhi now, oxygen parlors have come up. So the people of Delhi will have to now buy oxygen cylinders just for survival. You'll have to do a lot of defensive expenditures. In case of water pollution, you'll have to buy water purifier. So your cost of living increases when the environmental pollution increases. So those are analyzed in the in environmental economics subject. Similarly, what is the optimal level of pollution? Now we said that in Delhi there is a lot of air pollution, or in many other cities there is a lot of air pollution. But can we achieve zero environmental pollution? So what is the cost of having very high level of pollution? What is the economic cost of achieving very low level of pollution? So can there be an optimal level of pollution, not too high, not too less pollution, so that economic activities continues and environmental pollution is also minimized? So that is also analyzed in environmental economics subject. And then we also discuss what is the economic cost of different environmental regulations. We can achieve, say, low level of pollution through different environmental regulations. So, what are the different environmental regulations or tools we have? What are the strengths and weaknesses of different environmental regulations? And what is the economic cost of each environmental regulation? That is studied within the subject of environmental economics. Then comes ecological economic studies. Ecological economics, basically here the ecologists who show interest in economic valuation of the ecological services. Now, why is this become essential? Because many times the policymakers do not understand the the value of the ecological services, particularly in the hard policy making process. When the economist or the policymaker would argue that the new economic project is going to give us, say, multiple crores of rupees or multiple $1 billion, then in that case, people may not value the ecological services from the ecosystem. So, for example, if there is a choice to clear the forest and establish an industry there, or a new housing project, then people would always say that the industry will generate employment and income. People may not value the presence of a forest, but forest has a lot of ecological services such as the climate control. Then it gives a lot of oxygen. It regulates the soil. It increases the fertility of the soil. So it is actually a home to a lot of species. So how will you value all these things? So for that, we have to take the economic approach, and we have to use the economic principles to value the ecological services. For example, what is the economic value of oxygen generated by the tree? Similarly, what is the value of a tree that or the forest that controls the climate? What is the value of a forest that increases the fertility of the soil? What is the value of a forest that reduces the soil erosion? What is the value of monetary value of the honey bees or butterflies that helps us in the pollination, which increases the productivity? So we need economic tools that needs to be integrated with the ecological studies to come up with the monetary numbers. So that will help us in better policy making, and that's how we can recognize the value of the ecosystem. The ecological economics actually broadly actually studies all these issues. Then comes resource economics. Resource economics also has emerged as a complete independent discipline, and there we basically study the use of the renewable sources, non-renewable resources, and we should remember that all the resources have a time value, and the traditional economic analysis did not value for the time scale. And so, for example, we say that no, the coal is also renewable, but it will be renewed only in say 1 lakh or 2 lakh years, or even more than that. Which time value time is not the time frame is not applicable for the human being, because you never know whether the humans will survive on this planet for that long time. So we are worried. That's why about the non-renewable sources, that the non-renewable sources will take a lot of time for regeneration. That is why we have to use those resources optimally. So what will be the economic principles behind it? Similarly, when we are using the renewable sources such as forest, the fishes, or water, groundwater would be again a quasi renewable, because a part of it is renewable, rechargeable, and part of it is not. So that's why it is quasi renewable product. So how should we use the renewable sources? How should we use the non-renewable sources? And how should we optimally use the quasi renewable sources? What kind of regulations we can use for this? So those are studied within the field of resource economics or natural resource economics. This is also sometimes called as a natural resource management. So this subject actually is taught differently in different names, but those are basically the subject matter of this subject. So that's all. That those are the differences between the limit. We discussed basically the limitations of economics. Then we discussed the subject matter of environmental economics, ecological economics, and resource economics. Thank you so much.